Hi everyone, my name is Kelvin. I'm from the marketing team here at Rival Technologies and Reach 3 Insights. Welcome back to Outliers. This is, of course, our weekly event educational series where we chat with thought leaders and experts to learn new strategies and techniques that we can all use to engage with our customers, get deeper insights, and of course, drive better business outcomes. Our topic this week is all about that last point that I just mentioned, which is driving better business outcomes. We're talking about how we can build an insights team that drives revenue. Just a bit of an agenda, some of the themes that we'll be going over. We'll talk about how we can rethink our mission and our projects to get closer to business objectives like sales. We'll talk about how to accelerate and amplify the impact of your team. And then, of course, talent acquisition is a huge part of this as well. So we'll chat about how you recruit the right people to bring fresh thinking and new perspectives to your team. As always, I invite you to use the chat feature here on Zoom if you have any questions or comments. And a bit later, if you're game as well, we'll invite you to go online and ask your question directly to our speakers. Okay, our speaker today is Brett Townsend, head of North America Insights at Electrolux. And he's also a member of the board of directors at Insights Association, currently serving as vice chair. Hi, Brett.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well.
Thanks again for your time. I know you're very busy. So to start, let's give everyone a quick intro on you. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about what you do, maybe a little bit about Electrolux and your background and insights?
Sure. So Electrolux is the second largest global manufacturer of home appliances. Most people know us in North America as Frigidaire. That is our main North America brand. In North America, Electrolux is, we sell washers and dryers, just top of the line, highly rated washers and dryers now, with a relaunch of the major kitchen appliances brand coming into this year and next year. So excited to be kind of rebooting that brand and getting it more of a presence in North America. And so I lead our insights team. We pretty much have our tentacles through all parts of the business, and of course, brand and consumer and marketing, product development, innovation, sales, working with our retail customers and shopper insights. And then what we call our ownership solutions, which is everything post-purchase, consumables and things that fall outside of the spectrum of home appliances. So we work with quite a bit of within the company. So it's really great to have that kind of visibility throughout the whole organization, to see what's going on and understand what's going on over here may affect what's going on over here. And so it's kind of a nice position to be in.
Nice, awesome. Thanks for that quick intro. I know to start off, I actually want to tell you a little bit about how I came across your profile. I was actually in 2019 when you gave an interview to David Paul. I believe you gave the interview actually at the Corporate Researchers Conference. I was there as well, but unfortunately didn't meet you in person. But the podcast that you gave really caught my attention. So I'm going to read a quote from that podcast, and I'm hoping you can expand on that today. So this is what you said. A lot of times we as an industry get caught up in what I call interesting research. And then you went on to say, I don't have the luxury of being interesting. Interesting people get fired. So I thought that was a very provocative perspective. So I'd like to start there. Can you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean by interesting research, and why do we need to move away from it?
Yeah, I've just noticed over the years that a lot of people do consumer insights or market research projects without the goal of creating business impact, or without the goal of having it actually give direction or sell something. And then when I talk to different agencies or people approach me about research, a lot of times it's find out what's really interesting about what's going on, and using that word, and that word came up a lot, or when we're looking at insights and we're going, that's interesting. And then nobody knows what to do with it. But it's almost like something that you would see, an answer to a Jeopardy game or something like that. But it's an interesting piece of information, but it doesn't help us. And I noticed that there was a lot of that going on, where it wasn't where it was interesting but not helpful, interesting but not impactful, interesting but it doesn't lead to the so what and the now what. It's just basically a data point or a nice little thing to know. And it's just one of those things where I've seen people who are, fired or laid off or, cutbacks in their budget or something because they've lost sight of creating that business impact, of realizing that for most of us who work for-profit companies, we don't do research because it's interesting. We do it, the bottom line is to sell more things. And so I think that's where that came from, is just seeing a lot of that interesting research being done. I think part of it may be a holdover from our academic past, where people can just do research because they find it interesting and there's really nobody that they're accountable to as far as what did that lead to. And so it's just kind of refocusing and getting people to realize that it doesn't mean that what we do can't be interesting, but it has to be interesting and impactful, interesting and lead to sales, not just interesting.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, as a marketer, I can relate as well. We can do a lot of interesting things, but at the end of the day, we're accountable for business impact, revenue. So this idea of working on projects that have business impact, it sounds great, sounds amazing, right?
Sure.
But as you mentioned, it's not really the reality for many research teams right now. So, let's just pretend for a sec that you're a researcher working for a company where insights isn't seen as a strategic asset yet. How would you start to make this change? So I'm curious about what are the foundational things you need to have? Who do you need to talk to, or who do you need to convince? Yeah, just curious about the process that you would undertake.
Yeah, wow, there's a lot there. So I think my favorite saying is that the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And so you have to really, what you've talked about is reality, and it's a really big problem, but it's not something that you can tackle all at once. So I think it's very much a step process in how do you go about doing that. So I would say, first of all, it has to start with a mentality. Like in any sport out there, they talk about playing defense, whether it's basketball or football or volleyball or something, is that you hear people say that defense is a mentality, that in many cases you don't coach defense, and that the best defenders just have that mentality that they are going to, defend and stop and give everything they have. And I think that's really what that is you have to get people on the team or have them redevelop into this mentality of, we're going to change the way that we do things. We have to stop what we were doing before and do things better. So whatever that ends up being. So that would be the first thing, is really to instill that mindset and that attitude, and realizing that, okay, now everything we're going to do needs to lead to impact and sales, and we need to be able to have that. Second thing I would do is I would likely look at the previous year, or look at what research they have done, and start to identify what are things that are strategic, what are things that are tactical. What are things, some people call it perform or transform, however you want to label it. I would really look at what is tactical versus strategic. And in many cases, the types of insights departments that are lacking that type of impact are stuck very much in tactical research, very project heavy, very product focused, and very little projection, very little looking ahead, very little foresight, very little direction as to what to go do. And so I think I would then change the nature of the type of research that we do. There's always going to be, and this is the way it is at Electrolux, there's research that we have to do that is tactical, that's more of that perform thing, because we have to research products. We have a, an innovation process, and we need to develop products and get them out the door. But if that's all we're doing, then we're going to be missing the boat and on a lot of things. And so we have to be able to have things that bring a little strategy, bring a little foresight. We need to be thinking ahead of maybe where some people in the company are thinking. So that was probably the second thing that I would do, is start to change the type of research we do. I've heard some people use the philosophy of fewer, bigger, better. cutting down the number of projects that you do in favor of bigger, more impactful ones. And so I don't know if that's to me not a blanket approach, but I certainly think that is an approach that you could take. But really, it's just more about evaluating the type of work that you're doing and really trying to get a nice mix of the right type of tactical that's continuing, the ship moving, but yet enough strategic research where maybe you're looking at about how to build a better boat or how to build a faster boat or something along those lines. And then the third thing, there could be a whole long list of things, but just in what you've said, I think the third thing would then be to really start to make better connections and work better cross-functionally. State your goals to your internal stakeholders, head of marketing, head of sales, head of product line. State your goal, get them aligned. Part of the problems with market research departments in the past is that we're accused of working in silos and accused of, not really communicating to other people within the business, that we just go do our research and then come back and tell people what we think. And so I think the best consumer insights people nowadays are very persuasive and very charismatic and very great at building relationships. And so that would be the third thing I would say, is to build really great relationships, be very communicative into what your goals are, get buy-in from the other departments and get feedback from them on, what can we be doing better for you? How can we make this a better system where we're delivering you the type of insights that you need to really be impactful in your different areas of the business. And then related to that, as far as working in silos and building relationships, I would say that it's really important that everybody on the team develop much better business acumen as far as what's going on in the entire company. Because that's another problem we get into as an industry, is we're so locked into our research and we have blinders on, and we don't understand what the work that we're doing, how it fits within the overall business. And so it's really understanding product development, sales, finance, everything. Attending monthly business reviews, attending finance meetings, attending all of these other things, understand supply chain. Everything. And that's really kind of what we do as a team, and what we say as our goal is that we want to really know the business as well as anyone, because then it helps us not only do better research and deliver better insights, but it helps us be more proactive. If we know what's going on in different parts of the business, and like I said at the beginning, because we're so interconnected through different areas, we can see something going on that maybe somebody else can, and we can say, hey, we think the company needs this to help with this stated goal and this issue that we have. And so we can be more proactive in determining our own fate, to be more proactive in the types of research that we say we need to do as a company to help the overall business. And I don't know of anyone that would turn down, any senior executive that would turn down or push back against an insights department that is looking for ways to improve the business. And that's kind of where so that goes in with that last one.
Cool. Yeah, love that. Lots to unpack there, but maybe
I know. I was talking a lot there. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I think the best way to unpack that, or to kind of bring it to life, is maybe through an example or two. So, are you able to share an example, maybe from your own experience or from a story that from another peer, that kind of puts this all together?
Sure. There's a lot of examples. The one that I used when I spoke at that conference, when I did the podcast, it was kind of funny. When I got to Electrolux, I would have people come up to me and say, "We need to do focus groups." I'm like, "No, you don't." And they're like, "Oh, we need to do an ANU." I'm like, "No, you don't." And let's talk about questions. Let's talk about problems. Let's talk about what it is we're trying to solve and what questions you need answered, and then we will work on the way that we go about that. But it was so funny. We had people really focused on methodologies that we were losing the business question that, to begin with, because they were just thinking, well, let's go do some focus groups. And like, well, really, what are we doing here? So I think that was kind of the funny thing at the very beginning. I think people learned very quickly, don't come to me with methodologies, because I'll just say, no, you don't. And it was good that way. But I think really what's happened is that you kind of look, and I think in many cases this has happened to me throughout my career, where I get to a point where I feel like I hit a wall, and then I look for ways to then get over the wall. And so I think there's a good example I'd mentioned at the beginning about the Electrolux brand and how we are kind of relaunching that brand and really expanding that brand in North America. It's very popular in Europe and Asia and in many parts of Latin America, but in North America, it's not as big as in those other areas. And so we were really understanding, we did a really great job, I think, of understanding who our target consumer is and really identifying them and building out this story and who it is that we really want to make these appliances for and what is it that they need and desire. And so we have really built these appliances that are really going to meet the needs of this consumer. But it got to a point where we were doing a lot of, this was before COVID, but we were doing a lot of in-home interviews and a lot of behavioral and observational research. And I felt that we were getting to the point where we were starting to see and hear the same things over and over again. And I was getting questions from the brand team and from my CMO that I couldn't answer anymore. We got to this point where we were answering all of these amazing questions and really understanding who this consumer was so that we could build products and target to them. But then it got to a point where it's like, well, I can't answer these questions anymore. So I just started looking and I started asking around, started using my network and started, talking to people. And turns out that I ended up talking to this guy, to Mark Adams, who's the head of insights at Vice Media, and he shared with me kind of one of these things that they did to dig deeper into their audience, and he spoke about it at a Zappi and Vox Popme did a virtual insights conference in 2020, and he talked about it, and light went off, and so I realized, this is probably what I'm missing. This is probably what I'm looking for. Long story short, looked into it. We've done it now for both the Electrolux and the Frigidaire brands, and it has given us a greater depth of understanding that we could have ever had, that has now led to help us be more targeted with our media, to be more targeted with our brand messaging, to be more targeted even with the types of things that we're going to offer, the partnerships that we're going to create. It's just opened up a whole nother level that we weren't at before then. So really, it's just about always being curious. I think most people would say that's the number one trait that you would need as a market researcher, as a consumer insights professional, is curiosity. Never settling that the truth today is that what will be the truth tomorrow. Always being okay with being wrong, and saying what we're doing now is not working anymore. Let's look for other ways to do it. And so I mean, there's so many stories I could give you, but it's really kind of that attitude, that mentality, and being okay with gray areas. I think that's kind of, there's a lot of people that look in terms of black and white. And while I believe there is truth and there is fact, there is a lot of gray in what we do. And we just have to be okay to live within that area.
Yeah, cool. I love that example.
And make sense of the gray to everybody else. It has to be like, there's a lot of gray area that we operate in that makes perfect sense to me. And I'm able to make sense of it to everybody within the company. But it's still gray. We still have to be able to speak to the gray, because to a lot of people, it won't be clear.
Right. Yeah, and what I love about the example as well is learning from your peers, right? Like looking outside the organization to try to answer a business question. I think sometimes we get so focused on our own stuff that we forget that, the problem you're having was probably already solved by someone else as well.
And that's not the first time that's happened. I mean, there are a number of examples where I have gone out and started asking questions and started just making cold calls to people. I'll do my own research and like, oh, okay, these guys seem to be doing what I think I need. Let's call them and find out. And so, yeah, just not being afraid to do that. And there was one particular thing that I tackled that took me about 6 months to really figure out the right way that we were going to do it. And granted, I was working on other things at the time, but from beginning until end, it took about 6 months before I finally came up with a solution to how we were going to go about something. So yeah, it just, those things take time, but it's worth it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and to be honest, part of the reason why we launched this series actually is so people can learn from each other. I think that's kind of like one of our goals as well, because as your story demonstrates, you learn a lot from talking and listening to other insight professionals.
Yep.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and talk about taking credit. I've worked in marketing, in insights as a marketer now for 8.5 years. Before Arrival and Reach 3, I was at a company called Vision Critical, which is now called Alida. And I've collaborated with many research leaders on case studies, conference presentations, blog posts, everything else in between.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've noticed is that researchers are often very hesitant to take credit for business impact, especially if you ask them, it's like, hey, what's the impact on sales? Like, either they don't know or they don't want to take credit for it. So I have a bit of a two-part question for you here. As a researcher, how do you set up your is there a way to set up your projects from the beginning so that the impact on sales is clear by the time you're done? And then the second thing is, how do you communicate your wins internally in a way that puts a spotlight on your team without maybe taking too much credit that you don't deserve?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, we have to get over that fear of not wanting to take credit or not feeling like that we can. And I think it's really more of the latter, is that a lot of people in consumer insights don't feel that we can take credit for what's going on as a company. But then when I've had these conversations, people, I always ask, well, was it a consumer insight that led to a successful ad, which led to successful sales? Then yes, we can take credit. Was it a successful consumer insight that led to the development of a really great product that sold really well in stores? Yes, then we can take credit. But I'm always very careful to say that it's a team thing. We're never responsible for everything. And so when our team takes credit for things, we say we as part of the marketing organization did this or had this impact, or we as part of the product development group had this type of impact. Look at how this sold, this product sold. Look at how successful that ad campaign was. Look at the storyline that resonated so well with consumers that led to these sales. Well, that was based on a consumer insight. So it's if we're doing our jobs well, then product development, advertising, things in store are rooted in consumer insight. And we are giving them reasons to do what they're doing. Reasons for running that ad campaign, reasons for developing that product, reasons for doing that in-store display or doing some type of in-store promotion thing. And so then it just, it takes a little bit of effort, but we need to track those things and track how sales went. And then just, take credit for it. And the way that we take credit for it is I make sure that me and all of my team members put it in our year-end reviews, that we say this went up this percent, this went up this percent. When we talk about our teams, we talk about, how we helped develop this product that led to this. And I just saw what Brian said. It's hard to have a perfect correlation, and I absolutely agree. I mean, it's not always if A, then B, or we did this, so therefore we get that. What I have noticed is that in my last two stops here at Electrolux and at PepsiCo, nobody is looking for like numbers that you can go prove in court. I think people realize that if we're not trying to exaggerate, if we're not trying to over embellish what we do, or if we're not trying to take all the credit, if we say combined with the marketing team, we helped develop this ad campaign that resonated with consumers and that led to this, or we in conjunction with the product development team developed this line of products that exceeded our sales expectations, by 73%, whatever it is, it's then I think people realize maybe it's not exactly a linear line, it's from here to here, but we are still a part of those teams that cause that impact. And it's okay if somebody else wants to take credit for the same thing that we're doing. There'll be somebody in product line that will quote that same, we outsold by our sales projections by 73%. That's okay, because we're talking about the same thing. But what's happening is that consumer insights in many cases aren't trying to take credit at all, or there's no KPIs for what they're doing, or there's no real goal for what they're doing other than doing research. And that's where the problem comes in. So it kind of goes back to that mentality of, we're going to do this work and we're going to track this all the way to the end, and we're going to take credit for it for, what we were responsible for. But I agree, it's a very inexact science when it comes to that. But it's important that we do it. And especially when I'm in meetings with senior leaders, it's very important that I talk about our team and the people on my team and the impact we're having, because that's what they need to hear.
Yeah, and obviously the risk, if you don't do that, if you don't start taking credit for what you're doing and tracking the results, like that, the risks are pretty big, right?
Because it's very easy to like, let's say you have a successful ad campaign. Well, it's default to credit the marketing department for that. If you have a successful product, well, it's default to either give sales the credit or give product line the credit. But it's like, where are they getting those insights that developed that product, or that made that commercial, or made that media so impactful? Well, hopefully it's coming from us. And so that's why, it's understanding our place on the team and speaking up and taking credit for it.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. We'll open it up to Q&A pretty shortly here. Just a couple more questions. As I mentioned, a big component of this is talent acquisition. And you already mentioned this, the importance of having persuasive, charismatic people. But I know, in the past as well, you've spoken about the need to attract people who don't come from a more traditional market research background. So can you tell us more about this idea?
Yeah, it's been really big for me to try to get people from other parts of the business into consumer insights, and particularly people who were end users of consumer insights at some point. So whether it's somebody in sales, somebody in marketing, somebody in product development, who used to take insights and use them for their work, part of the business, because they know what is needed. They know what is good consumer insights and what's not. They know what is impactful and what is useful and what can help lead to sales and what doesn't. And so bringing that perspective in has been so valuable to me personally and to the teams I've been on over the years, to hear from someone in product development. You guys did this and that went really well, or this, what you do here is very impactful, but here, not as much. Or from somebody in sales saying, this in my presentation, when I did this, the customer loved it and it really helped us, but this, not so much. So I think it's been a process over the years to learn, that and to value the type of insight that people from other areas of the business can bring into consumer insight. And in many cases, and it's not just we're all taking, we have a lot to offer and a lot to give, because if we're doing our jobs right, working on our team gives them the most in-depth understanding of the consumer of anywhere in the company. And it helps them be consumer centric, and it helps them generate that consumer empathy and thinking about the consumer first. So when they leave insights, and this has happened in both at PepsiCo and here, is that we have people come into insights and then they go out into other areas of the business, or they come in, like very specifically, we had somebody on my team who came in from product development, spent 2 years on our team, went back to product development, and she's talked about the perspective that she has now is so much different than it was when she was there before. Have someone on my team that we brought in from supply chain. And, she's killing it right now because of what she is, understanding what she has from part of her business, from that part of that business, bringing it into here. So I think just the experience and the perspective they bring is invaluable to us. And then from a general standpoint, I think, as you mentioned that I talked about earlier, is the people who build relationships, people who are very good at working across different areas, people that are really great at being persuasive, because not every time are people going to see what we're doing the first time we do it, and we have to be persuasive and be patient and do that. And I think that's an art, and people need to learn how to do that. And so it just helps build trust within the organization, but very specifically about bringing people in from other areas. And when I see job listings or I hear about some companies and what they look for in insights, I'm going, well, you're going to continue. If you get that, then you're going to continue to do what you've always been doing. And so I think we always want to be growing and broadening our tent, so to speak, as far as who we include in what we do.
Cool. Follow-up question that I received here. How do you ensure, so if you're hiring from outside of market research, how do you ensure that you don't lose like that rigor? Because obviously there are some fundamental, market research skills that you still need.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on your company, and it depends on what's going on. I mean, there are some companies that really want that type of rigor, that really want the type of process. There are other companies that are like, we understand the trade-offs, but we need this quickly. And so it's really about knowing your audience and really about understanding the type of deliverables your company expects. So I don't think there is a right answer to that other than know your audience, know their expectations, and then deliver on those. And more, though, I will say that companies are relying less on traditional academic rigor than they are on quick insights that may be 85% right, but that's enough for them to make a decision on. And you see a lot of companies like that with Zappy and Vox Popme and a lot of these startups that have happened over the last 5 years that have really capitalized on that need for quick answers and quick insights. Now, the one thing I would say is that the data has always got to be good data. So we have to be diligent in making sure we're getting good data. But just because something's quick doesn't mean the data is bad. So I think it understands that. But if we don't have good data, then we don't have anything. So I think if the one thing that I place a lot of emphasis on and where I place my rigor is in the data and making sure that I'm working with people and working in ways that deliver the best data. But that data can be fast. That data can come in a week and doesn't have to be 6 weeks or 4 weeks. So find great data sources, find people, and this is where I'll plug for the Insights Association, is that we have a code of ethics related to data and related to data collection, and agencies that are part of the Insights Association are adhering to those codes. And so if you have a doubt about data integrity, look to a company, look to an insights agency that's part of the Insights Association that adheres to those codes, because you can get quick data while still getting good data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for us, that's a big thing as well at Rival. Like having good data and being fast. Like I think you need both, right? Like it's not one. Yeah, it's not one or the other. And
we don't have to trade off anymore. Because
No.
companies like Rival and other companies, they've done a really good job of saying you don't have to sacrifice, speed for quality. There will be some trade-offs. I'm not saying that there aren't trade-offs, but it's so much better now than it was 5-10 years ago, as far as getting quick data.
Right. Yeah, and that importance of getting directional insights, right? Like to your point, like 80 to 85% might be okay, because you don't want to be late in the market or something like that. So
most senior leaders that I know are not looking for 100%. And I'm not just talking within Electrolux, I'm talking with other senior leaders I've talked to over the years are like, I'm not looking for 100%, because is anything 100%? That's kind of I've gotten that question back. It's like, is anything really 100%? I mean, that's a good point. And so it's just, we just need to, we've got to get really good data that leads to decisions, tell that great story that helps people understand it. And then boom, we're off. And we're off to the next thing we got to do.
Nice. Okay. Just wrapping up here a little bit. I'm curious. This is left turn, but like, what are your predictions for market research in 2022? I know you just came back from CRC as well, so I'm just curious if there are any trends you're watching or you're most excited about for this upcoming year.
I mean, not really. I mean, really, what I just keep seeing over and over again is people finally grasping the how we can impact the business. And a lot of the people that spoke at CRC last week weren't doing any really cool methodologies. They weren't really doing anything that's really technologically driven, or there weren't any real neuroscience things, or not that that's the end all be all, but you know what I mean? It's like usually they're talking about new methods or really cool technologies or things like that. And most everybody who spoke last week was talking about just how they have changed their focus and how they delivered impact. And so the short answer to the question is no, really, I don't see anything in my position at Electrolux or with the Insights Association where I see just these major trends. If anything, it's how we can still do quick research and have it still be effective, and just continue to focus on impact and really driving that business impact within all of our organizations. The other thing too is I think of broadening what we view as consumer insights is another trend. Is that a lot of times we think, well, we got consumer insights here and we have, big data analytics over here. But really, we're doing the same thing, just coming at it from different angles. And anything that touches the consumer or that helps companies make consumer-centric decisions is consumer insights. And so, it's breaking down the barriers between analytics and traditional market research or consumer insights, and, combining the what with the why. And you have the what that informs and the why that transforms, and making sure that we're, working together and doing those things. And I've noticed a lot of market research divisions and departments are having analytics people within their organizations more than they have before. So, but it's all in the name of driving business impact. And I think we don't necessarily need more technology or better trends. We just need more of a focus and of that trend of how can we drive more impact.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. Okay, one last question here. I'm just curious, do you have any favorite failures from your career? Just curious, you've had a long career so far in Insights, so just curious of any fails. I'm stealing that from Tim. I don't know if you listen to Tim first, but that's kind of one of his favorite questions, and it's one of mine too. So,
yeah, I mean, we all have certain things we look back on and we've learned from. I think there was some things I did at PepsiCo. There were a couple of I was part of a couple of new brand launches where we launched a new brand, and for the most part, had some things that were really solid, that were really good. I was part of the team that built these brands from the bottom up, and they got discontinued after a couple of years, after a few years. And I think there's a lot that I've taken away from that. And so, and it wasn't even like we necessarily did anything wrong, but I think really it's just being honest with ourselves and looking back on it. And that's what we did as that group. We looked back and say, okay, this product eventually was discontinued after 2-3 years. Why was that? What did we miss? What could we have done? And then I think it's just looking back and saying, okay, well, we see where we could have done better there, see where we could have done better there. And then we just kind of move on, really. So I think the favorite failures are the ones that didn't linger, are the ones that didn't stay, that didn't have this big cloud hanging over, and we were able to just learn from and keep going. I used to coach junior Olympic volleyball, and I would tell my players, I'm like, don't lose the same game twice. Okay, if we get beat in this one game, fine, but don't carry it over into the next game where we're still letting this game that we lost beat us in the next game. And I think it's the same thing here. Don't let the same failure fail you twice. It's just learn from it, move on. And then, and so now it really kind of prepared me, because being at Electrolux, where we have durable appliances, which, durable goods, which are, very technology driven, which take years to develop, it's really helped me hone in on making sure we don't fail because we fail on something like that and it's a big deal. And so the failures in the past have really helped me hone into what I'm doing now on a durable goods company, where we can't recover from a big failure like we could, launching a new salty snack product.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. One final question, I promise.
That's fine.
I'm just curious, who are other people in the insights industry that you admire?
I gained so much inspiration from just my network, and getting myself out there. I will say that Tim Hoskins, a friend of mine who's the CEO at Quester, he was the one that really kind of encouraged me, I don't know, maybe about 8-9 years ago, to put myself out there. And he goes, you've got a lot going on. You're doing a lot of great things. You need to put yourself out there more and really widen your network. And by then I knew a lot of people, but I think by taking his advice and putting myself out there, by getting involved with the Insights Association, eventually being elected to the board of directors and continuing to really create my big network. I mean, there are dozens of people that are in my network that inspire me, because I see what they post, or I'll have a phone conversation with them, or I'll, we just kind of shoot the breeze and talk about what's going on with you, and what are some things that you're doing. So, some of the big names up at the top that you would expect me to say, I'm like, they don't inspire me as much as my colleagues do in my network, because, they're the ones on the front lines doing the work, being in the board meetings, giving the presentations, dealing with developing product, working with all those things. And so those are the people that really inspire me, and where I think a lot of the ingenuity in our business is coming from.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time, Brett. Do you have any parting words for us or anything like that?
Just, I say all the time, I fell bass backwards into this business. I never grew up wanting to be a market researcher, and I don't know if anybody really does. But I have been now in this industry for over 20 years, and I absolutely love it. I am so very passionate about what we do. If you get asked, when I get asked that question, if money was no object, what would you do for a living? And I would say doing what I do now probably ranks second or third on my list. I mean, I love what I do. And because of that, I am very passionate about our industry and want to see us be better and deliver better impact. And so that was why I got involved with the Insights Association. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's why when I do things like this, that's the message I want to get out to people, is that this is so fun. We get to deal with humans who are so interesting and so, always changing and always evolving. And so nothing is ever chiseled in stone. And so there's a lot of excitement and a lot of discovery, and maybe it appeals to my personality, but we're in a great industry. And I think just by all of us doing a little bit better and really focusing on the right things, man, this can be such a rewarding job. And I just want kind of that optimism and that feeling to get out with everybody else. So that's kind of what I say on everything that I do. So that's kind of my parting shot, is like, we're in a great business. Just enjoy it and really work on developing that impact and on your businesses, and people are going to love us. They're going to see what we do and love.
Love that. I don't think we could end on any better note. So let's leave it at that. Thanks again, Brett, for your time, and maybe we will do a part 2 of this sometime next year. Definitely, because there's a lot to unpack there. But I appreciate your time. Thanks so much again.
Yeah, thanks to you. Thanks to Rival for the invitation, and really, it's been great. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Okay.